challenging because I ended up in a field where I knew nothing. And I had a lot of moments where I felt a little bit dumb, but I guess that's also a PhD thing. Imposter is not a new thing. And then you realize and you start learning about immunology. And the more I knew, the more I kind of understood this is a field that is so endless. And like, there is so much to know and so much to connect. And it just left me even more kind of knowing I don't know anything.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Blooming Late Scientist podcast. I am so excited this week to introduce Elena Hoffer. But before we start, I do need to congratulate Elena because she has recently defended her PhD and I feel like I've not even had the chance to congratulate you yet. So applause to you. How are you feeling about that?
Thank you so much, Martina. It actually feels like it has been such a long time, but it was just on the 10th of November. I had very mixed feelings about finishing my PhD. I guess like a lot of PhDs that are listening. But now I'm feeling really good because I got these 2 months to kind of calm down and focus on my new goals that I have set. So it's I'm happy.
How does it feel to not have the PhD to think about anymore? Does it feel strange?
Actually, for me, it doesn't feel strange, but it's because I kind of jumped directly into a new adventure with a lot of new big goals. So I feel like I could imagine if I hadn't already thought of what I want to do now in the future, I would feel a bit lost at this stage. I felt lost during my PhD because I didn't know what to do, but then I thought about it. And now at the end of my PhD, since I already know what I want to do, it feels like I feel like I have other goals that I can work towards, so I don't feel empty or anything, because this is what I think a lot of people otherwise feel, because you have worked towards something for 5-6 years and all of a sudden it's done. And then the question is, what's next? And I think a lot of people think after I'm done with my PhD, my life will finally start. But I think what actually kicks in is a lot of emptiness.
Oh, that's such a good point. I mean, I would describe it as there is a phenomenon called empty nest syndrome, which is when their children grow up and they leave home and all of a sudden you're left without children in this empty home. And I think that after your PhD, it's a very similar feeling. It's like, oh, I've lost I felt in some ways that I'd lost my value. And that was really tricky. So it's really interesting to hear that from you. But let's do a little introduction to you, because I feel like I've made you jump in without introducing. But obviously this podcast is all about hearing about people's different experiences into science and, like, you know, maybe doing a PhD later, or maybe not having a science background but working in science. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
So actually, I mean, I can start from my PhD and then go a little bit backwards. So I did a PhD in immunology. It was skin immunology, to be more precise, and I mostly focused about T cells in the skin and different skin diseases. And my background from my bachelor's and master's is actually in a very different field. So I studied pharmaceutical biotechnology. So I actually transitioned from a field that was more on the pharma side, that was more like, how do you actually produce medication, like antibodies, towards very basic science, understanding how are T cells in the skin maintained and how can they actually cause the disease, the skin disease psoriasis. And that was a very interesting transition. It was challenging because I ended up in a field where I knew nothing. And I had a lot of moments where I felt a little bit dumb, but I guess that's also a PhD thing. Imposter is not a new thing. And then you realize and you start learning about immunology. And the more I knew, the more I kind of understood this is a field that is so endless. And like, there is so much to know and so much to connect. And it just left me even more kind of knowing I don't know anything. So that's my background. But before I actually did my bachelor and my master studies, so I'm not a typical kind of like, I did high school and then went to do my bachelor and then to do my master, I actually first did, I don't know what you really call it. I guess in the UK you call it apprenticeship. It was a professional
Oh, yeah.
training to work in a pharmacy. So I was a pharmaceutical technician. Yeah. And
Me too.
no, this is
Yeah.
so funny, Martina. I think actually I read it in one of your posts.
Yeah.
Now I remember. So I trained to be this pharmaceutical because I loved pharma and to understand how do certain medications act in the body. And I was just fascinated. And then I realized I went to industry for a year. I worked in a lab and I realized this is not for me because, I followed a protocol every day. And it was the same every day. There was not a lot of thinking involved. And I felt like I want more. I want to use my brain. I want to, I want to do something. And this is when I went on to study pharmaceutical biotechnology because I thought I love the whole understanding of what medication does. And in this case, I looked really into how are antibodies produced. And I thought it's really, biotechnology is an upcoming field, right? It's growing. And that was also one of the main deciding factors for me to study something that I know I will have an employment in the future.
I find it so fascinating. Just even the term, I mean, there's so much we can talk about, but even the term biotechnology, like when I finished in the lab in 2018, 2019, biotech as a term was only just becoming a thing. And my university had only just started offering degrees that specialized in biotech. And I feel like in the space of like 5 years, it's just exploded, the biotech field and the terminology. And now we have biotech, tech bio, deep tech, all of like it's just expanding. It's crazy, isn't it, how much that's happened in such a short space?
It's absolutely crazy. I can also tell you a little anecdote. So this program that I studied, I started in my bachelor's, I think it was 2012. It was actually developed by a big German pharmaceutical company. It's called Boehringer Ingelheim. So they brought this program to the university because they said, we want to collaborate because we need people with that exact knowledge. So we can, because they were already like, thinking, what is the future? And I think it was an emerging field, like maybe, what is it, like today's 12 years back. Oh my God, it sounds so far. And I'm feeling so old when I'm saying it, but yeah, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, it's one of the, I guess, fastest growing fields too. And I mean, if you look at the prognosis until 2030, it's supposed to grow a lot.
Oh,
yeah.
Huge.
Huge.
So going back to your apprenticeship type thing.
Yeah.
What did you call it where you are?
I mean, I called it pharmaceutical technician. I really don't know what's the actual
so
term
were you
for it.
dispensing medicines?
Sorry?
Were you dispensing medicines in a pharmacy? Like, were you giving them to customers?
I was giving them, how the education works in Germany, it's 2 years of school.
Right.
So you're only learning. So you're not actually working. And once you have all the knowledge, then you can do an internship for half a year. And there I was doing dispensing medicine to patients. I was producing it myself. It's still quite common to produce creams on a prescription from dermatology, especially because, I mean, skin diseases are very varied and there is a very heterogeneous. They're very heterogeneous. So that was my main task. Yeah. And I loved the interaction with the patients. It gave me a lot, but I also realized as a pharmaceutical assistant, you will always be working in a pharmacy, right? There is not a lot to climb up to because you're very capped. This is what you can do in a pharmacy. So when I moved to industry with that degree, I worked in a position that really didn't challenge me mentally, or like I wanted to have more. So this is what I did. And to actually finance my bachelor and my master, I kept working in the same pharmacy, I think, for until the end of my bachelor. So I worked in that pharmacy Saturdays for the past 10 years, which was really good also to kind of maintain the knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, that must have, it's great, isn't it, to do that? But you must have found that quite difficult at times.
To be honest, yes. I did find it quite difficult at times, especially because, I mean, as you know, when you're studying, it's quite demanding. And at the time, having a weekend was very important. Now that I think it has also prepared me for my PhD because, as you know, PhD, you don't have a lot of weekends. And now it's so funny how you adjust your mindset. Now not having a weekend is completely normal for me. It's like, I'm working weekends and it's kind of like a normal working day sometimes, which is scary in a way because I think it's also a road to get into a burnout.
Yes. Yeah, you
Definitely.
have to be careful. So, what made you kind of so interested in skin? You talk about even back as far as being in pharmacy. What was so fascinating to you about skin?
So, to be honest, I somehow got into the skin field. I didn't actually specifically look for it. I was looking at the time for a master thesis place where I could go to. So I looked at Karolinska Institute, where I have been before, and then I got referred to my supervisor that I did a PhD with at the end. And she worked on skin diseases. But what made me interested in working with her or working in the field of skin diseases was that they're so heterogeneous, and it's quite interesting to study and understand. And on top of this, it's a quite huge burden on a lot of people. So if you think about, for example, psoriasis affects 2% of the world population. So this is quite a lot. And up to date, we don't have any cure. We don't fully understand what drives the recurrence of the disease. So there is a lot of research to be done. And one might think it's only skin lesions, but once you understand like how it affects your mental health as a patient when you're completely covered in skin lesions, it can have quite severe effects on your mental health, and people are really suffering. So I thought it was an interesting field to do research, because I thought I could contribute to something that is really relevant, or I don't know
Mm.
how to say.
I always find it, I think there's a lot of need for education around this kind of area, because I'm always surprised at how many people still don't understand that psoriasis is actually an autoimmune disease. Lots of people just think it's like eczema,
Yeah.
when actually the pathologies are obviously very different. Um, like, do you feel that's something we could change communication and be better at that and informing people that it is autoimmune?
I definitely think we could. Also, because I think what it would take away is a little bit this, sometimes when you meet, or when people who don't know what psoriasis is and they meet someone with psoriasis, they're not sure if it's infectious or if they should, protect themselves. So this is also what actually puts additional burden onto the patient. I think overall understanding and educating the population would be a very good thing. But on the other hand, Martina, when you meet a patient who has psoriasis or has some sort of skin disease, it's very hard to really, unless the patient tells you, because it's a friend, to really know what are you actually encountering right now. It's
You
just
almost
sometimes.
need to be patient facing to really understand everything.
Yeah, and I mean, I can tell you, I'm not a dermatologist, but my supervisor is a dermatologist. My co-supervisor is a dermatologist, and it's actually not that easy. Also, I think psoriasis, plaque psoriasis, there are also different type of psoriasis. So whenever I talk about psoriasis, I talk about plaque psoriasis. There are different forms of psoriasis, and it's not always super simple to diagnose different skin diseases and distinguish them from each other, also for dermatologists, because skin diseases are extremely heterogeneous.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, I studied immunology, but it was intestinal immunology. And what you said really resonated with me, because the more I learnt about immunology, the more I realized I couldn't possibly know everything about immunology. It's probably the most complex scientific field out there. There's so much to learn, and you just have to concentrate on your one small area, because otherwise you get lost, don't you?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more with the statement, because, I was always dreaming about putting things in context, because the way we look at the immune system is very isolated. I looked at T cells, right?
Mm,
I take one component, but you know what I think is so important? The microenvironment around the T cell, the other cells that it interacts with. So
mm,
I always dreamed about, like, what if we could connect all of these things? But I also see you have to start isolated in to put it at some point into a bigger picture. And I think right now it's just very, very hard. And if you think about all these different chemokines, so it's not only cell types, you have chemokines, microenvironments, you have stromal cells, and how they all produce something at a certain time point. And it's really, really hard to actually know what is happening. But in this case, I think it's so cool with all these new emerging technologies, like the whole spatial
Oh
transcriptomics. I
yeah.
don't know if you have heard about it. I mean,
Mm,
you have because you work in biotech. So it's just, I mean, I think the new tools really allow us to study it in depth, also more in the context of their microenvironment, which I'm actually excited about to see what is going to happen in the future and help us understand cancer microenvironments better, also the microenvironment within psoriasis, for example.
yeah, me too. I think the microenvironment's so important, and so many models just don't take that into account because it's all about budget and things like that normally, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Going back to your time, so moving from your time in pharmacy to doing your undergrad,
Hmm.
what what would you say were the challenges that you faced from moving from work, like employment, to education full time?
Honestly, the only thing that I can think of right now, one of my really biggest challenges was my English. And
Oh,
yes, I know, maybe the most unexpected answer, but at the time, you have to imagine in Germany, we don't speak, I'm from Germany originally. We don't speak a lot of English. You learn English in school, but then you never really use it except for when you go on vacation. So, and after I have left school, I didn't need it really. So going back, studying pharmaceutical biotechnology, where some lectures were in English and we had to present in English, it was, yes, it
wow.
was, and Martina, I know you cannot imagine because now we're having a conversation. But
Yeah,
if you had met me like 12 years back, I mean, I have grown a lot from this standpoint. And it's nice to see how you went from someone who was really insecure in speaking a language, because I also always thought I overthought it a lot. Oh, I thought everything has to be correct when you speak the language. You have to get the right tense, and it's just so I was overthinking it so much. And yeah, I mean, now look at us. 12 years later, sitting here having a conversation, I'm creating all my content in English, but also I think my English is still not perfect, but it's also I don't care anymore because at
I
some
mean,
point you
it's
just
great.
become comfortable.
Yeah. Do you know what? I absolutely love that answer because I think so many people will relate to this. And, I'm the worst because I can't speak any other language apart from English. I'm like I'm like your typical horrible British person that doesn't speak any other language. And I have total admiration for people that learn other languages. And it must be so hard in an educational setting. But what I love about what you said was usually people will answer that question with things like money is the challenge, which of course is true. It's true. And things like that. But I love the fact that it's something completely different and it will be something that people really can relate to. When I was at my last company, actually, they sold education technology into Europe. And I was always gobsmacked at the amount of European degrees that teach in English. I was like, really? They don't teach in their own language? And I saw so many universities that do like a course where they teach purely in German, let's say,
Mhm.
and then another one that's the same course, but they teach it in English. And I was like, this is fascinating because if you come to England, you're getting taught in English, right?
Obviously.
You're not getting taught in any other
Yeah.
language. So the way that you overcame that, I mean, that must have been so scary doing presentations in another language.
It was so scary, but what was like even scarier was when I decided, I think it was end of 2014, to write my bachelor thesis in Sweden at Karolinska Institute. And I realized the only language I can speak there is English. And I was like, okay, this is so out of your comfort zone, but you're gonna do it nevertheless. This is nothing that will hold you back. And I was like, I mean, it really it took me so much to actually come into that state of mind that I will go there and then actually do it. And I did it. And I have never been more grateful for a decision than for this one, because this just, I grew so much because I saw I can overcome it. At the end, I left with a relatively decent, like, or a relatively decent amount of confidence in my English, And
Yeah.
I have met people from all over the world, and this experience was just like, for me, it was life changing, to be honest. And if I had not done it because I felt I'm not gonna be able to overcome the fear of not being perfect in English, I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here, Martina. I think I'm just so grateful, because it also showed me when you go out of your comfort zone, there is so much growth. But you need just do it. That's why I love Nike so much. Just do it.
I love Nike
Yeah.
too.
I'm actually talking about Nike. No, I mean, it's still, but it's true. Sometimes just do it and
Yeah.
let go of the fear of judgment or any other thing.
But that's
Yeah.
such a good lesson in life generally, isn't it? That if you constantly strive for perfection, you will never be happy.
Yes, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think it's a recipe for unhappiness, because at the end of the day, also, what is perfect, right?
Mm.
What is perfect for you is not perfect for me. So you're not really avoiding judgment. You could still, when you put your filter on, you would still be able to say maybe, oh, for me, this is not perfect. So I think what people, I love Brene Brown. Do you know
Oh
her?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, my
Of course.
favorite. Like, and she really says it's just a way of protecting yourself, because you think when you're perfect, you have no surface to be, vulnerable. But that's not true, because it's just something we tell ourselves. But there is nothing like perfection. Maybe perfect in your way, and then you feel better of going out. But it doesn't protect you from judgment or how people perceive you, I
Absolutely.
think.
And I think, at the end of the day, people like to see people's flaws. That's what they like. They want to know that you are human like them and you've made mistakes and you're not perfect. That's what makes you so appealing in the world, especially in business.
Absolutely. It reminds me when I started posting on LinkedIn. I know, and I know everyone who listens and does create content on LinkedIn or any other platform, it's really scary in the beginning, right?
Oh,
And you
yeah.
think, oh, I need to get everything right. And then you're a bit insecure about your English. And then you're like, oh, I cannot have a typo or anything. And it's interesting how you just, when you start something, maybe you still try to do everything perfect. But now I realize, if I have a typo, whatever, I don't care anymore. I have become comfortable with not being perfect, because people like to see we're just humans too. It's not like you go up and everything is great in your life, even though you have maybe 25,000 followers and you manage to, no, it's not. It's just, you had also your insecurities when you started, and you just grew, and you kind of accept that we're all humans. And you see also, when you're a bit on the platform, people that you encounter on the platform are human too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
yeah,
think that's so important, the humanness.
absolutely.
How do you think your employment history, like when you first worked in pharmacy, how do you think that has helped you along the way? And by that, I don't just mean the science. I mean,
Hmm.
like you would have dealt with customers and things like that. How has that helped you in your kind of educational path, or even what you're going into now, which is basically entrepreneurship, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a good question. um I need to think about it.
Have a think. I was thinking, because I didn't have a scientific background,
Yeah.
and I worked in a field where I was always with people, in the fashion industry. And initially, when I went to university, I was really nervous about that because people were quite judgmental about the fact that
Hmm.
I came from fashion. But I actually found that the fact that I had experience of working with people, like the general public and other stakeholders in businesses, almost put me at an advantage because I knew how to communicate with the academics the senior academics, I wasn't frightened of communication. And I found that compared to people who'd just come from school, there was maybe a bit more confidence. I don't know if you had similar experiences.
I mean, what I can tell you, what I have realized, I think was a bit different. When I started my PhD, as compared to a lot of others, for me, this was like a real job. And sometimes I feel like a lot of people, they were hiding behind the word student. They were like, I'm just a PhD student, you know, I'm not supposed to know, I'm not supposed to do this, I'm just a student. And I think what I brought from this experience by working before, I knew that when I go there, this is just another job. And I will always do my best, and I will always, you know, try to show up at my best and put in my best. And sometimes, yeah, as I said, I think the word PhD student is something where some people also like to think of as themselves as students. And I never thought of myself as a student. I thought of myself as a person, more of a scientist. I thought of myself as a scientist. Of course, I was learning, but we always learn. Whether you're a PhD student or a scientist in a company, or now running a business. Now I have a PhD degree. Now I'm running a business. I'm learning every day, and the learning curve is so steep. So I think the mindset and the approach to how I performed my work, and how I showed up to my work, I think was something that kind of was related to the experience of having worked before and not just studied.
I think you're absolutely right that the word student after PhD has some negative connotations for both the student and people externally that view you. Because when you say I'm a PhD student, people outside are like, oh, just another student, like, and I mean, no student is like that. Let's get that clear. But people thought that I was just going to university for 3 hours a day and having a lovely time. And I was like, I don't sleep. I don't have a life.
Oh yeah, it's so, you know, it's so, yeah, but of course it's just so misleading. Sorry.
It is completely misleading. Yeah. So I think that's such a valid point. In terms of your journey, have you had some good mentors? Like, how has that contributed to where you've got in terms of support and mentoring?
I think I was very lucky. First of all, like my PhD supervisor, she believed in me oftentimes more than I did in myself, and it gave me this, what should I say, confidence. It gave me confidence that I can do things, because, you know, before I ran my very first single cell sequencing experiment, it was my first year as a PhD student, we had no one in the lab. It was back, I was still using the first version, so I'm really one of the early adopters. I had no one that I could ask to, turn to, and I know I wanted to optimize, coming back to perfection. I wanted to optimize every factor that could play in, that it can go wrong. And I remember at one day we sat in this meeting and my supervisor said, "You're ready, just do it." And you know, this was all I needed. I needed someone to tell me, yes, you are ready, just go. And I think I was very blessed in a way, because she really always kind of, I don't want to say push, but like to be better, you know,
Mm.
to grow. And I think she supported my growth as a scientist, but also as a person very much. But on the other hand, I also had a very, very good mentor in industry, that I could turn to, you know, ask career related questions. So I think good mentorship is very, very important and a critical factor to success. That you have people that believe in you, support you, and kind of try to help you to become your best version of
Yeah.
yourself. Sounds very cheesy, but
No, it's true. I think
yeah.
that sometimes when we do PhDs, we often, depending on your supervisor, of course, and your experience, sometimes you can feel like you have to do everything alone without any help, because that's what makes you tough, and that's what makes you resilient, and that's what helps you get places. But actually, when you look back and you reflect, you think, I could have got from A to B so much faster if somebody had been there to support me along the way and, just give me a little push. Like you said, just do it. Just go and do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's so important, isn't it? No matter whether you're a PhD student, you're in employment, you're the CEO of a company, that support and mentorship is so key.
It definitely is. And also just to get the guidance, because you start in something, you have no clue where to start. I mean, and it's overwhelming because you need to learn a lot of things. You need to read, you need to plan experiments, you need to order reagents. It's like a big mess and a lot of things you need to handle at the same time. So someone who gives you some direction where to go to it's immense valuable, because at this point you don't understand which steps to take when, right? And what is important at which stage, maybe. So it's really good that you have someone to say, just do it. We're actually not paid by Nike, just so you know.
Well, I'm just about to ask you, what's the one bit of advice you would give to someone if they say, it's too late for me now to go back to education?
I would say, honestly, it's never too late. I guess it all depends. I came also from a comfortable kind of situation. I had an income this year that I worked in industry. But it's a bit about your aspirations and like where you want to go in life. So if you ask yourself, where do you see yourself in 5 years or in 10 years, and it's not in your current job, but actually it's something where this type of education could help you, I would say if you find a way of doing it, just go for it. Because I'm always a long-term thinker. So now building this company also means for me, right now, kind of unemployed, right? I mean, it's not unemployed because I'm running the company, but you know how it is. Mm-hmm. And I think of it's something that fulfills me. So I go for it, even if it means that it comes at an expense of money or other things. I need to invest time because I know the long-term outcome will be so much. Now I forgot the word. It will be just, so fulfilling to know in 5 or 10 years, this is what I have built and I'm living the dream that I have dreamed of. And to realize you are the creator of your life and you need to take the responsibility. I think if you want to do something and you think it's something that fulfills you or would make your life better in a way that you can work towards the person you want to become, I would say go for it. Absolutely. And I mean, there will be challenges, but there are always challenges. And I think it's just about overcoming them and finding solutions, honestly. And if you really want something, there is always a way to get there. I have done it many times. That's why I also know building a company, I can do it because I have handled so many other struggles along the way of getting here. I have the confidence that I can do it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Very long answer. I don't even know if I answered the question, but yeah.
No, you absolutely did. And I think, you're so right that it's so hard to, I know we can't put ourselves in everyone's shoes, but there is always a way. Things are possible. I mean, for me, it was about knowing that I was going to have to face bigger challenges for a few years to have a life that meant I was going to have less challenges in the long term. So sometimes it's about knowing that you're going to struggle for a little while in order to have a better life in the long term, isn't it?
I could not have said it better. Thank you, Martina. This is kind of like what I was trying to say. It's worth investing to go to a point where, maybe one day you can work 4 hours a day because you have built something in the past that was an immense investment in terms of time or even money, but it brought you to a place where you wanted to be or where you feel like this is the life I wanted to build.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So tell us, where are you now? Where are you going in the future? And how do we find you?
Oh, okay. So right now I'm in Stockholm, Sweden still. This is where I did my PhD and I will stay here for some time. I'm not sure where time will or the future will bring me. I'm super open in terms of location. I have finished my PhD last year. Since the beginning of this year, I am officially the co-founder of a company called Alma-Me, which helps PhD students in their transition into industry. And I have a fantastic co-founder that brings me a lot of joy. I don't know if joy is the right, but it makes me very, very happy to work with her. She's an awesome human being. And we're just putting up a course for PhD students right now. I showed you earlier. I mean, the learning curve right now, like what I have learned in the past 2 weeks since I really started focusing on it full time, it's incredible because you have to do everything, just like in a PhD, from content creations to a product launch plan to creating the course material, making it visually pleasing, creating a logo for the company, thinking about a brand strategy, marketing, etc. pp. So I don't know if you said it like this, but there's so much to learn, and I love it because the learning curve is very steep, but so is the growth curve. And I think it's one of my values is growth. So for me, this is absolute fun what I'm doing right now.
I mean, this sounds amazing and it's so needed. So many people need the help with this. So it's going to be fantastic. So, how do we find the course once you put it out? Where do we find that information?
The information you can find on our website, which is called alma.me.
Okay.
Well, right now we still have a different domain, but we're moving it over. So we bought the alma.me domain. So once people see this, I guess this will be the actual domain. Otherwise, connect with me on my LinkedIn. I'm happy. Please leave a little personal message, maybe that you listen to the podcast, because I get a lot of connection requests. And when someone encloses a personal message, I always accept.
Okay.
And also, I know you're coming from, you have listened to the podcast and maybe you want to connect with me because something resonated with you. So I'm happy to do that. And there also, if you want to know more about the course, I have the website on my LinkedIn profile if you want to visit there.
Elena, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I just want to say to our guests, like, we'll see you next week. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We'd love to hear more from you about what you thought about this episode. And if you have any questions for Elena, you can send them my way or you can connect with Elena yourself. But we'll see you next week. I'll let you say bye first.
Thank you so much, Martina, for the invite. It was fun talking to you. You're always such a fresh breath of air. Like, I guess it's the UK humor. Maybe I should move to the UK. I love you guys, actually. Yeah. Always makes me laugh a lot. So thank you so much for the invite. I completely enjoyed it talking to you. It was fun. And I hope it's valuable for someone out there.
So valuable. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.